Hello, this is Yogeshwar 7000 again, and I'm back with another very important birth chart today. In our last video, we did the birth chart of Swami Vivekananda and trying to understand as to what made him a great Yoga Purusha, or a person of a great personality of his times. And today we'll be talking about another chart who was also a great personality of her time. And this chart is of the late Prime Minister of India, Mrs. Indira Gandhi. And she was the third Prime Minister of India. And she was born on 19th of November 1917 and was the daughter of the first Prime Minister of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and actually, as a matter of fact, was trained under Jawaharlal Nehru, her own father. A very important chart, and it's got some very important combinations which basically you should analyze and see and try to understand as to what are those combinations, what are those planets which made her so great. Indira Gandhi, if you look at her chart, her ascendant lord is the planet Moon. And for this ascendant chart, Mars is a very important planet. So like I did in my previous video, Swami Vivekananda, I'm just going to bring to your attention a few of the things which are represented here in her chart. But at the same time, I would invite everybody who is interested in astrology, who's a student of Jyotish and astrology, to try and analyze, and through our comments section, try to put your comments in, as to what made Indira Gandhi so great. Indira Gandhi, although she was the Prime Minister, she was elected the third Prime Minister in January of 1966, and that was her Jupiter period. So let's see first how Jupiter is placed in her chart. Is it good? Is it bad? I think it's beautifully placed, because first of all, as per this Lagna chart, Jupiter is a very auspicious planet, and it is very nicely placed in the 11th house. Now, Jupiter also, as you know, that it's sitting in the house of fulfillment of desires, which is the 11th house. So she obviously was desirous of becoming the Prime Minister, and eventually she did succeed in becoming the Prime Minister in January of 1966 in the Dasha of Jupiter. So I'll recommend, please go and see what exactly was the Dasha, what was the sub-period, what was the sub-period when she was first sworn in as the third Prime Minister of India. Now Jupiter is also Lord of her 12th house here. And as we know that she was trained under the guidance of her own father. And the 9th, did I say 12th house? No, Jupiter is the Lord of the 9th house. And she, as we know that Jupiter also represents Guru. And here, because of the lordship of the 9th house, it represents father as well. So as we know that she was trained under the guidance of her own father, so that is a very strong indication of how Jupiter functioned in her birth chart. Now Mars also, as per her ascendant, is a very important chart. It's a Yoga Karaka. So the Yoga Karaka is also very nicely placed here. As you see, the Lord of the 10th house, which is the Lord of Aries, Mars, is placed in the 2nd house. That is a very powerful yoga, and that gave her the power and the prestige and the name and the fame, and also was very, very instrumental in her gaining all the political power as far as her chart is concerned. As far as the marriage part is concerned, you can see very clearly that Moon is sitting, which is the Lord of the Lagna, sitting in the Kendra or the angle house in the 7th, very nicely placed. So she got married pretty early. However, if you look at the planet Saturn, which is also aspecting the moon, that gave her some troubles in her marriage, as we all know, that she was separated from her husband because of her commitments, her political commitments, and there were issues on that account. So that's very evident through this chart as well. Now, another very important thing which this chart will show you is the Parivartan yogas, and we did a video on Parivartan yogas in our few sessions ago, where we knew, or we came to the conclusion, that Parivartan yoga is the exchange of planets and between rashis or zodiac signs. And what happens is, when a parivartan or an exchange happens, those planets become extremely strong. So here, what kind of Parivartan yogas do you see? There is one Parivartan yoga which you see is between the Lagna or the ascendant and the 7th house, because the Lord of the Lagna or the ascendant, which is moon, is sitting in the 7th house, and the Lord of the 7th house, which is Saturn, is sitting in the Lagna or the ascendant. So that's one Parivartan or exchange yoga right there, which has made these planets, Saturn and Moon, extremely strong. So what is the effect of Saturn and Moon when they become strong? Moon, of course, is the Lord of the Lagna or the ascendant, so it has to be auspicious. However, Saturn is not. So there'll be some kind of a mixed result, and I'll let you analyze that rather than me bringing the analysis on my part. And then, through the comments section, you can put in your comments, and this way, we can learn from each other as well. People, who are students and who are astrologers and who love Vedic astrology. The second exchange yoga, or the Parivartan yoga, you see between the 11th house and the 6th house. Now here, a 6th house is involved. So is it going to be good for her? 11th house is involved. Is it going to be good for her? So that is something which, please analyze and put in the comment section. I'll recommend, so that, we can exchange our thoughts on that. The 11th house Lord, which is Venus, is sitting in the 6th house, and the 6th house Lord, which is Jupiter, is sitting in the 11th house. So that's the second Parivartan yoga. But what are the effects? Please go through these planets and see how the effects would be felt, and what would she have experienced, especially during the dashas or the periods of these planets which are involved in the exchange. So first exchange we saw between the Lagna or the ascendant and the 7th house. The second exchange we saw between the 11th house and the 6th house, and we have to determine as to what effects it would have given her during the times of the dashas of these planets. It could be antardasha, which is sub-periods, pratyantar dasha, which is sub-periods, or the main dasha, which is the main period, or the mahadasha. The third exchange is between the 2nd house and the 5th house. Here, if you see on the screen, the 5th house Lord, which is Sun, the 2nd house Lord, which is Sun, is sitting in the 5th house, and the 5th house Lord, which is Scorpio, whose Lord is Mars, is sitting in the 2nd house. So there is an exchange between the 2nd house and the 5th house as well. So that is a very important Parivartan or an exchange yoga. Here the planets Mars and Sun are involved. So how's Sun for her chart, and how's Mars for her chart? That we have to determine, see what effects Mars and Sun would have brought in the dashas of these planets. Could be the Mahadasha or the main period, the Antardasha or the sub-periods, the Pratyantardasha or the sub-periods. So that is a very important determination we have to see. Also, we know during her political career, there was a time when she imposed. First of all, an important landmark is the war which India had with Pakistan, where she won the war very convincingly. So that period also has to be seen. Also, another important event in her political career was when, after the war, she was elected with an overwhelming majority, and that period also has to be seen. And then after winning the war and winning or coming in power with an overwhelming majority, she imposed emergency, which was widely criticized, and a lot of human rights, and there was a lot of criticism on that account of human rights, and there was political criticism for her during her emergency years, because there was a lot of opposition from her, and she had no choice but to impose emergency, which of course can be argued both way, whether it was correct or incorrect. But anyways, that was a very challenging period of her life, and that happened in her Saturn period. So we have to see as to what Saturn brought her. Is Saturn a lucky planet for her, or an auspicious planet? That's a better word. Is Saturn an auspicious planet for her? And as we know that Saturn's aspect is generally very, very very strong, and could be very inauspicious in case for a chart Saturn is not auspicious planet, or if it's not a functional benefit especially. So that also has to be determined here. And the most important thing, which and a very sad event which in her life which happened, was her assassination on October 31st, 1984. And what period she was on, so I'll bring that to your attention as well. She was under the period of Saturn, Rahu, meaning the main period or the Mahadasha was Saturn, the sub period was Rahu, and the sub period was again Rahu. So how did Rahu play a role in her life? Was Rahu auspicious for her? Rahu sitting, as you see on the screen, in her 6th house, and we know 6th house is a house of enemies as well. And without going into more details about her chart in terms of Gemini, or in terms of Bhrigu principles, or the Ashtak Varga, because we just are the divisional charts, because a lot can be determined from her divisional chart as well. If you see her divisional chart, you'll see as to what were the planets which could give her power. Here we are lucky to have the exact time of Mrs. Indira Gandhi, and there's no confusion in regards to her time, so we can very conveniently determine her events through her divisional chart as far as her political career is concerned as well. She had 2 sons. We can see from her birth chart as to which planets gave her 2 sons. As we all know that Jupiter is a Putra Karaka, so please see where Jupiter is placed, where it's aspecting, and what planets are aspecting Jupiter, and then we can have a discussion on that. I mean, I can bring up all these points as far as what I'm thinking, but I would rather have you also get involved in this discussion. Jupiter, as you see, is directly aspecting the 5th house of children, so there's a hint right there. Her father, we've already discussed, is represented by Jupiter, which is Guru, and she was trained under him, and is sitting very nicely in the 11th house. So that's another determination. So going back to her assassination, Rahu and Saturn played a major role here, because she was actually assassinated during that period. And we have to see as to how Rahu was as far as her chart is concerned. I mean, is Rahu lucky for her? Or is Rahu very, very inauspicious for her, especially her ascendant, especially her moon Rashi, and in relationship to the ascendant and the moon Rashi? That's what I mean. So please analyze that part as well. And also her interest in spirituality. What do you think gave her interest in spirituality? What do you think, which planet gives interest in spirituality? She was known to patronized several ashrams and several gurus. She herself wore a Rudraksha mala around her neck, and she used to go to astrologers. She used to believe a lot in Vedic astrology. And she was involved in several pujas and going to temples, so on and so forth. So what are the planets which made her do that? That also can be very clearly seen in this chart. As far as her political ruthlessness is concerned, she was ruthless to her enemies. What were the planets which made her so ruthless? Please have a look at that also, and I would invite you all to make their comments in the comments section. And of course, we discussed about her assassination and important events of her life, like getting elected as the prime minister once in 1966, and again the war which she had with Pakistan and her convincing win, and then thereafter her convincing win in the political elections that happened, and then again her problems. So do you think the problems may have happened because of her Parivartan yoga or the exchange yoga? Because if these 6 planets are involved in Parivartana, because there are 3 Parivartan yogas out of the 9 planets, 6 planets are involved in Parivartan, which made those planets very strong. Did they give all positive results, or did they give mixed results? And what were the periods of those planets? What periods were operating rather when she ran into her victories and her challenges and the emergencies and her political opponents against her, and her losing elections at one point as well, and then coming back into power. So there were a lot of ups and downs, and that can be determined through her dashas, especially Vimshotri dasha is a very important system or a very important technique to look at those. And from the point of view of Gemini, this video is too short to be able to cover the analysis from the point of view of Gemini and from the point of view of Bhrigu Sutras or from any other technique. But I just wanted to bring this chart to your attention for people who have not analyzed this chart in detail so far, so that we can have an understanding of how the Lagna Lord placement helps, how is the Lagna placed, what gave her the political power, how the 6 planets which are involved in the 3 Parivartan yogas behaving, what's her Yoga Karaka, how did Yoga Karaka help her, how could she become wealthy, or was she wealthy or was she not? She claims she was not. There were political opponents who mentioned that she was pretty wealthy. So what is the house of wealth, and how do you think it would have helped her acquire the wealth and the political power and the ruthlessness in which she operated, and her successes and failures? So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and we can catch up through our comments section. In the meanwhile, I will recommend subscribe to my channel and check out my website. There is a link below, and I will see you with an interesting topic very soon. Goodbye.